Alright, welcome back to the Sunday Famday. We are going to the architectural boat tour in Chicago. And that is where we are going on. It's a nice and cloudy day, not raining. Alright, we'll see you down there. Architectural boarding pass. Is that our boat?
What I was saying is, in Canada they only have a few buildings, and they're all large. In the U.S., they have a few large buildings.
Alright, we are going on the boat. Oh, pretty cool. Dirty. It's a dirty. Gotta go around. So this is the boat. Look at the top. The inside too. Going on the top deck. Okay, look inside. We're outside. Okay.
If you want to sit there.
That's fine. Alright, we're on the boat cruise.
Done in what's called the Beaux-Arts. Beaux-Arts is French for the beautiful arts. When you hear Beaux-Arts, think ancient Greece, ancient Rome. The Beaux-Arts style capital he built for the fair, so well received by visitors, so lovely. That stuff actually maintained, and it found its way from the fair, right, into the architectural plans of some of Chicago's new high-rises. In fact, yeah, a lot of those who built the White City, the World's Fair, they would go on to contribute to rebuilding Chicago. With all that said, friends, as we get underway here, the first building I want to show you encompasses that Beaux-Arts. It showcases the Greco-Roman style that was so popular at the fair. The building you're going to see here first was designed by Daniel Burnham, the man who built the White City. The building has sat there since 1909. It is called 175 West Jackson Street. If you come with me now, out here to the forward right, see those two nondescript brick buildings there in the distance beyond the trees? They're each over 115 years old. That is the Vogue building and the Dixon building. Yeah. Look just past it. See that stocky off-white stone tower? Not particularly tall by today's standards, but notice how 175 West Jackson there does stand as a behemoth above the brick buildings, right, that came before it. To find that Beaux-Arts, to see that Greco-Roman influence there at the top of the building, the cornice, see the three-story Roman colonnade there? Not supporting anything, purely decorative. Those are Ionic-style Roman columns. In addition to the Beaux-Arts, that again came from the fair, you'll see other European influences. That was the idea in the 1880s, 1890s, early 20th century. You'll see Spanish, French, Gothic-inspired buildings later on. And then watch how you go further in the distance and thus further through time. As you enter into the roaring 20s after the passage of the women's suffrage movement, prohibition brings out gangsters, brings out speakeasies, right? All of our favorite things. They began to build these taller limestone buildings that are Art Deco. Art Deco buildings accentuate their own heights with what are called ribbon windows. They'll draw you right to the top. That one there, the Chicago Board of Trade by Halliburton and Root, that was the tallest skyscraper in Chicago for 25 years. That building is a mind-melting 45 stories tall. In 1923, the city of Chicago passed zoning laws that told developers once you build to a certain height on your building, you've got to reduce the mass on top. That's why you'll see with Art Deco the elegant setbacks designed so that more sunlight comes into the city. And then historical accents. There on the CBOT, that statue, her name is Ceres. Ceres is the Greco-Roman goddess of grain. She pays tribute to the fact that the Chicago Board of Trade originally was a grains exchange. Now have the cameras out. You'll want to get a picture of the tallest skyscraper in Chicago, the 23rd tallest building in the world. It was the tallest on the planet from 1974 to 1996. A good example of the mid-century after World War II in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s when this was built. It was all about office space, so a lot of dark black boxes got built. Again, modernism, corporate America, post-World War II. This particular tower stands 1,451 feet in height, 110 stories tall. You know this building. You love this building. It is, of course, the... Very well done. My locals know it's the Sears Tower. They wasted no time telling me. That woman clenched her fist. I thought she was going to strike me. It's now called the Willis Tower. No one calls it that. Those are fighting words. Like, she was right to threaten me. I accepted that threat. She's right. Now watch this. Move from the dark black boxy vibe to that. See the red and pink granite? It came from Texas. See the octagon-shaped tower? The bundle tubes there at the extremities? See how all that material comes together? Nothing about 311 South Blacker Drive there is a dark black box. That came in the 90s when color, material, building things to be very big became popular. And it makes sense, right? Like things like what you just saw, 311 South Blacker Drive by Cohn, Pedersen, and Fox. That was the answer to modernism, right? After 30 years of, dark black boxes, people craved color, material, accents, things like that. Now, shifting back to the Sears, I want to tell you the secret as to how they built the tallest building in the world back in 1974. The man who invented how this building was built is an ingenious engineer from Bangladesh named Dr. Fazler Khan. He worked with Bruce Graham on the Sears Tower. The building is comprised of 9 separate structures. In theory and by design, there's 9 buildings here. They're put together right in a 3x3 configuration. Note how only 2 of the 9 bundle tubes that make up the Sears go all the way to the very tippy top. As you look way up there, smile and wave. There are people, undoubtedly, in those 5 glass boxes up there taking our photograph. Have you been, or are you going? Yeah, to the sky deck here at the Sears. That's called the ledge. When you walk out onto those glass boxes there, nothing separates you at over 1,300 feet down, but about 1.5 inches of glass. You go to the top of the Sears on a windy day. You'll feel the building moving about. It could sway the entire building, all 9 together as one. Could sway 18 inches in either direction. There'd be no structural damage. The most the Sears ever swayed, though, was 6 inches. And that was more than enough to scare the bejeebus out of the people who were visiting the observation deck, many of whom were from out of town and were not expecting it, didn't know how to handle it. They were all screaming. The Chicagoans, the locals who had gone there on purpose, they were high-fiving, having a great time, living their best life. Yeah, it was a good day in Chicago. Now here's the kicker. The 2 dark black boxes you see here to the forward left, that's Gateway Centers 1 and 2. They're from the 1950s and 1960s. The very same person who designed these built the Sears. These were done by Bruce Graham. As you gaze upon these corporate soul crushers here, can we all appreciate these are just precursors, right? Like what could become one day a Sears Tower? If you had these 2 mid-century black boxes, add 7 to that, we'll call it 9, right? Put them in that 3x3 configuration, stretch them into the sky, that's how they did it. And this is more indicative of what you'll see when we talk about, folks, the Miesian black boxes. The father of modern architecture is a man from Germany named Mies van der Rohe. He was a member of the Bauhaus School of Architecture. They had ideas like this stuff in Germany back in the 1920s. He moved to America in 1938. One could say that thanks to World War II, the world didn't actually begin to do his ideas that he brought from the 1950s, right after the war. But again, 30 years, black boxes. This next one's amazing. for a lot of reasons. Coming into view left-hand side, a limestone tower. You'll see the elegant setbacks, the verticality, the geometric shape of it all. Halliburton and Root built this building, 1929. We nicknamed the Daily News building here the Sphinx building. We call it the Sphinx building because these annexes that are here at the extremities, yeah, those are paws. See how the building then becomes the lion sitting there facing the river? You don't need to overthink this, right? Help your neighbor. Don't you see the Sphinx, dear? Ah, you never see anything, honey. So why would Halliburton and Root reach back to ancient Egypt and make the entirety of their building a reference to that? Well, a lot of us forget this, but in 1923, archaeologists uncovered King Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. King Tut's tomb, unlike other burial chambers in that part of the world, had not been ransacked by grave robbers. All the gold was still in there. Americans are going to speakeasies, right? Prohibition. People are throwing Egyptian-themed and golden-themed parties. Like this really struck the world. They're all getting rich while the market's hot in the roaring 20s. It makes sense that conversations were had amongst colleagues and friends. Eventually that stuff ended up in the architectural designs here in the city. Do go see the Daily News building there. It's awesome. A very famous poet and author used to work there. A man named Carl Sandburg. Carl Sandburg once wrote a tremendous poem about Chicago. Do look it up later and read it. The poem is entitled Chicago. In that poem, two of this city's nicknames, the City of Big Shoulders and the Hog Butcher for the World, thanks to the meatpacking in the Union Stockyards, now a neighborhood in Chicago called the Back of the Yards. You'll want to take photographs of this brand new skyscraper here, friends. 150 North Riverside Plaza is 55 stories in height. Designed by Getch Partners. This has become kind of a signature of theirs. They've done stuff like this before. The reason why this building looks the way it does is due to the specifications of the property. By that I mean, in Chicago, you legally have to have a riverwalk. That ain't up 40 feet of space on the water's edge. The other side of this building, there are inbound and outbound and Amtrak trains. They couldn't build into that. They did build a park above the tracks. Getch Partners built this building on just 38 feet of land because the base is so slender. The foundation goes all the way down to the bedrock. As we all watch our heads here at Lake Street, I'll tell you, yeah, that skyscraper there goes deeper than anyone's gone ever to build anything in Chicago. The caissons go down 126 feet. That means the building's actually socketed an eighth or 6 feet into the bedrock beneath us, which is limestone. And then I want to welcome you all now to Wolf Point. As you look around, you'll see how lovely this location is here. This is the confluence of the three branches of the Chicago River. Groups Drive, where the town of Chicago and the city of Chicago came to be. Along these very banks, the first taverns to the stores. And now I have a brand spanking new building for you, one of the newest things I can show you. That is Wolf Point South, 57 stories in height. The front of the building has a whole lot of texture. I've come to call the new features on these new buildings what I call shadow lines. The shadow lines give you the verticality, draw your eye to the top. If you look at this building top to bottom, know that if you flip this skyscraper upside down, it would still give you the same silhouette. The way it sets back into the sky, right, and is reduced up there is the same way it is reduced down here, the way it kind of tapers into it. Wolf Point South there was designed by architects. They did just lease the naming rights on that building there. It's now called Salesforce Tower. Salesforce Tower in San Francisco was also designed by Pelly Clark Architects, the folks that just did that. And as you leave that historically significant site behind, Wolf Point, which has now kind of become our collection of contemporary architecture, we mosey onto the North Branch here, and I want to draw your attention there to the forward left-hand side. Welcome, welcome to the Chicago River Cottages. There are 4 units over there. They're from 1988. They're 4 and 5 stories tall, respectively. The triangular shape of the buildings is reminiscent of the sail of a sailboat. All 4 units here have private dock access. You know why? Because boating is life. Nothing else actually matters. The building features these round windows. Those are just like porthole windows you'd find on a boat. And what those circular staircases have to do with boating, you'd find things like that inside of lighthouses. Folks, the fellow who built the cottages was a sailor. He served in the U.S. Navy. His name is Harry Weiss. We have to watch our heads here at Kinsey Street. Yeah, all of Harry Weiss's projects feature those nautical themes, and he used the triangle a lot, as again, it reminded him of the sailboat. Do you folks like tidbits? I got a good tidbit. Tidbit? 3 of the 4 original purchasers of those units there from 1990, they still own them today. They bought them for $350,000 or $500,000 then, but they were buying a 4 or 5 story tall unit. The only one that ever sold the second time sold 8 years ago now. They had paid $350,000 for it back in 1990. They sold it for for $1.2 million.
Wow.
Indeed, all you youngsters, invest in real estate. Get that baby a mortgage tomorrow. Now here's a lovely development. Again, the zoning laws in the city requiring accessibility results in very nice things. This one to our left is from the early 2000s, designed by Papa George Ames Architects. This is Kinsey Park. Kinsey Park has mid-rise and high-rise units, but along the water's edge here there are 70 four-story townhomes. They're modeled to look like European row houses. They're lovely, yeah? Folks, before they even broke ground on Kinsey Park, all 70 of these townhomes were purchased. Bought before they were built, again, early 2000s, very robust financial backing then. They went back in the day for 1.2. If you want a four-story townhome there right now, they're about $1.8, $1.9 million.
Wow.
And those townhomes there, if you picked them up and put them down in neighborhoods like Streeterville, the Gold Coast, Old Town, parts of Lincoln Park or Lakeview, they fetch well over $2 million, maybe $2.3 million in those neighborhoods, yeah, for a nice four-story townhome. And friends, that's frankly why when I lived in Old Town, I rented. Bro, love Old Town, great neighborhood. You go check it out. Hang out on Wells Street. Go to Zany's or Second City. Go to Utopian Tailgate. Go to Burton Place. One of my favorite Italian restaurants is in Old Town on Wells and Schiller. Go to Orzo's. Orzo's is fantastic. You shan't be sorry. So guys and girls, I realize not everyone can afford to live in some of these buildings in these neighborhoods on the river in Chicago, but we were all raised on industry, blue-collar work, right? We're Midwesterners living in this Rust Belt city. We firmly believe that anyone who's anyone deserves to come down to the water's edge. Our motto is that we are a city in a garden, and dating back to when this place was a small town of 300 people, they believed then, we believe now, the waterways should be open, clear, and free. In the River North neighborhood here, a lovely park. You'll see folks utilizing it in real time. Welcome, welcome to Aaron Montgomery Ward Park. Named in his honor, a lot of us remember Ward as being one of the big catalog company giants here in the city, not unlike Spiegel or JCPenney's, right? Sears and Roebuck. What folks tend to forget about Aaron Montgomery Ward is that he and a small handful of others actually battled the city of Chicago in court for over 2 decades using their own money to preserve a certain parcel of lakefront property, which then politicians and developers could not wait to build upon. They actually said they hated Aaron Montgomery Ward for getting in the way of progress. Folks, the area of land they battled the city over for over 20 years with their own cash went on to become Chicago's front yard. That's Millennium Park, Grant Park, Museum Campus, and Maggie Daley Park. It is the jewel in the crown, right? When you consider the 26 miles of lakefront in Chicago, years ago the city saw fit to make sure he had his own park. And if you went out last night and got lit in River North, that neighborhood there, yeah, you were just partying in an old warehouse district. In River North, go to the Billy Goat Tavern on Lower Michigan Avenue, go to Rossi's, go to Snickers, go to Boss Bar, go to 3 Dots and a Dash, go to Untitled, really cool speakeasy, and go to the Green Door Tavern. In the basement, go to see the Drifter at the Green Door Tavern. Now those friends are very high-end recommendations, like, hey, how are you? But they all the way down go. They do go all the way down to like, oh my God, why are we here, honey, type of places. Because we go everywhere. Gotta enjoy the city. Now, speaking of Aaron Montgomery Ward and the old warehouse district that River North is, Aaron Montgomery Ward used to occupy that massive warehouse ahead of us here. That thing dates back to 1912. When this was built, this was at that time the world's largest poured reinforced concrete structure ever built. Wow. Folks, it's a prairie-style warehouse. Prairie-style buildings hug the earth. They keep a low profile. Note the horizontal lines of brick that achieve that. Just like maybe a Frank Lloyd Wright home that is prairie-style, right?
That's so
Keeps
cool.
it low profile, hugs the earth, a lot of horizontal lines. This old warehouse is a good example now of adaptive reuse, right? Old school building modified for present day purposes. People now live, work, and play in here. Beautiful Riverwalk was created by just blowing out the lower quarter of what used to be the basement of this building. And things are a bit different up here. The sounds of downtown vanish, and I talk about the industry on the river like it is just from the past, but for more of our past than not, this river was polluted, congested, filthy, just a major artery for commerce and development. You used to not want to be around this thing. You can still see some of the industry that exists here today. You'll see elevators, silos, water towers on old brick buildings, big barges full of material being delivered to one of several material companies here in Chicago. That's Prairie Material over there. And then this off the forward right, pretty cool. This is the southern tip of Goose Island. It's an old industrial park here in Chicago where the beer company gets its name from. The Goose Island location got that nickname because the Irish immigrants who settled out there, they used to hunt the geese on the island to fulfill their protein needs. Now, just north of Goose Island, around the bend up there, over the next 10 years, a massive new neighborhood is being built up here on the North Branch. Go ahead and look up later the Lincoln Yards. The Lincoln Yards will take likely 10 years. It'll redefine the area here in Chicago, allowing these neighborhoods to get more access to the Chicago River. Uptown, Wicker Park, Old Town, West Town, West Loop, Ukrainian Village, Noble Square, River West, all these neighborhoods stand to benefit from further growth on the river, and even the building right ahead of us, as you'll note in real time, has become to be demolished. They've come in to destroy the old 1970s built Chicago Tribune Freedom Center. That's where they used to manufacture a newspaper for the Tribune. Now, note back in the day how the architecture and the design actually did reflect the negative attitude about this river that folks used to have. Take, for example, when they built this Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill in the 70s for the Trib, they built the parking lot right on the river's edge. You might think that was designed to beautify or maximize the commute for the employees. Wrong. Put the parking lot out by the river. Create a buffer zone between us and that disgusting, odorous river. Yeah, the parking lot down here just to kind of separate the building, right, from this waterway. If this were a development today, and of course it will become a new one, they'll have parks and gardens down here, river walks. We'll be enjoying the waterways. And if you do go online to see what's going to sit on the site of the old manufacturing plant for the Tribune, you'll note that Bally's got the contract to build their new casino. That's right, Chicago finally got its dream come true. We're building a new casino. It will solve all of our problems. Folks, I can't foresee any negative consequences whatsoever of a new casino on the river in Chicago in 2025. Oofta akta liba. The financing has gone through. There was a time when I thought the financing might not go through and there would not be a casino, but it did go through. They're going to build it here. Massive development that extends beyond just where the building is. But here's the thing, right? Talking about architecture and how the buildings showcase that folks used to not like this waterway. I give to you here on the right-hand side the back end of the building. Yeah, right? It makes sense. Developers and investors back in the day, for more of our history than not, they wouldn't have cared about their buildings and how they looked on the river. No one would see it, right? It was kind of like an alleyway. You didn't want to go down. Note how there's no windows on this side of the building, right? Not a one. Makes sense, yeah? Nobody working in there back in the day would have wanted to look out these windows, if there were, to see this disgusting river. Now, things are, of course, different today. We've talked about the zoning laws requiring accessibility. You've already seen some old buildings modified for present-day purposes. And as we come around the bend, you can truly appreciate what's happened here in Chicago on the river. Just beyond the beautiful park, there sits our lovely skyline. The view you're going to get here is actually very neat because you're peeking into right now the grid system that is downtown Chicago, the northeast-southwest grid, like the alleyways, public buildings, Navy Pier, Buckingham Fountain, Upper and Lower Wacker Drive. Much of what you see in the city are due to the fact that they're all part of the Daniel Burnham Plan of Chicago published in 1909. I mentioned earlier how he was the father of urban planning, built the White City as well. His plan called for much of what we see today. So enjoy the view here, and I'll tell you a quote we in Chicago remember Burnham well for. Burnham said, "Make no little plans, for they have no magic to stir men's blood, and they themselves, they may never actually be realized." He said, so aim high in work and in life. It is with that quote and this lovely view that I will leave you for a few minutes, friends. My first of 3 very short breaks. Stretch your legs, get a drink, say hi to your neighbors. I'll pick back up very shortly where we then have 2 more big legs of this trip to go. We're glad you're all here. Thanks for joining us. Thank you all for listening. Are you enjoying this stuff? Do you like it? Yeah. All right. Yes, indeed. We love to do it. No one has more fun than us. Keep enjoying. We'll pick back up and continue on this journey. Cheers. Thank you. Chicago River. That's what's known as contextualism. All those who live there have windows and balconies which face east, so they can enjoy this view out here to the forward. And I do want to bring you back to the aforementioned 150 North Riverside Plaza. Talked about the property specs, the slender base, how deep it goes. To keep this very skinny building stable, engineers installed on top of it what's known as a tuned mass damper. A damper will dampen the effect of the wind. In this case, there's 12 concrete tanks up there full of 600,000 gallons of water. When the building vibrates in the wind, that water above sloshes about in the concrete tanks it's in, and that actually creates the inertia to shimmy the building back to a standstill. Also, the I-beams that were forged to then be used in the V-shaped part there, that's where all the energy and weight for the building goes, yeah? They channel it into the core, into the earth. The I-beams in the V-shaped part here at 150, they're made of what's called G5 steel. Folks, G5 steel is not just my new nickname. It's worked out very well. G5 steel happens to be some of the strongest steel manufactured on planet Earth. They make that stuff in Luxembourg. People from Luxembourg, they bring up their steel manufacturing unprovoked. Yeah, the same way a Chicagoan will tell you where to buy your pizza when you did not ask him. Go to Gino's East, Lou Malnati's, and Giordano's. Period, end of statement. For a lovely dining experience and to still get the old world deep dish recipes in River North, go to Pizzeria Uno or Pizzeria Due. Those restaurants are lovely. They exist inside of mansions built in the 1880s. Now, people in Chicago will do things like that to you. Hey, get a hot dog here. Try this pizza. I'm a North Sider. I'm a South Sider. Hey, this is my favorite building. They'll say to you, I love the curvy glass building at Wolf Point. That's 333 West Wacker Drive from 1983, right, when they were climbing out of the modern era. The bend in the building, you guessed it, following the river, more contextualism. The blue and green glass even mimics the green river and blue sky it reflects. That was built by Cohn, Pedersen, and Fox, and the most important thing y'all should know about 333 West Wacker, that building served as Ferris Bueller's dad's office in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, that's cool.
In the film, when they do the exterior shot of the building early on in the movie, look for this next you watch, there is a little boat going by on the Chicago River.
Ferris
It's in the
Bueller.
movie. Who do you think was deckhanding on that boat?
Gotta watch it.
It wasn't me, I was just 3 years old.
Yeah,
I was watching the Super Bowl Shuffle at home that day, I believe. Captain Joe, folks.
Yeah.
Captain Joe was deckhanding on the boat that you'll see later on in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Who do you think was piloting the vessel? Joe's dad. Father-son duo, I kid you not, in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, this one here is one of the world's biggest office buildings ever built. The Merchandise Mart, paid for by Marshall Field, designed by Graham Anderson, Post and White. It used to be owned by Joseph P. Kennedy, yes, of those Kennedys. He commissioned the busts that you see, the heads that face the Mart. He called those the Princes of Merchandise. Marshall Field's up there, Aaron Montgomery Ward. This Art Deco building has 7 miles of hallways and corridors. There's 4.2 million square feet of space in there, and the building used to have its own zip code. It was 60654. We've got to watch our heads here at Well Train rumbles overhead. A beautiful view coming up here to the forward. You gotta love the enthusiasm that comes from a place like Milwaukee. Those ain't locals. Those girls just made the 90-mile trip south for what we call Little Chicago. Go to Milwaukee, it's a great city. It's just like another big town I love called Chicago. I mean, heck, we call Miller Field Little Wrigley, or Wrigley North. Then again, the Brewers did win the Central, and my Cubbies won today, so I'll hang on to that. All right, friends, here we go. Coming into view left-hand side, one of the few remaining warehouses on the Chicago River today. This one dates back to 1914. It's called the Reed Murdoch Center. It was designed by George Nimmons. Nimmons was a student of the Prairie style. It's a Prairie style warehouse. He built actually 13 warehouses in Chicago. I call him the warehouse guy. See, 3/4 the way up, a very bold horizontal line of brick and terracotta. That helps the building hug the earth, helps it stay low profile. Even if you follow the brick columns to the very top, see the terracotta tiles that cap off the brick columns? See how they arranged them? They are arranged to look like grasses, grains, weeds, the things that grow in the prairie. You would see similar imagery just like that, but as a stained glass window on, say, a Frank Lloyd Wright home. Do head down to Hyde Park, Chicago Southside neighborhood, right by University of Chicago, down by U of C. go see the Roby House. Roby House is a good example of Frank Lloyd Wright's work, one of his top projects, they say. And now I have for you what might become your new favorite building in Chicago. Brace yourselves, watch out, there it is. 55 West Wacker Drive. What happened to you, bro? Who did this to you, fam? Why are you the way you are, Don? That's called brutalism. Brutalism. When you see heavy, coarse concrete, buildings that remind you of bunkers or FBI headquarters, CIA buildings, things from the Soviet Union, things from Eastern Europe, even the US and universities use a lot of brutalism. It comes from the French, béton brut, which roughly translates to raw stone or raw concrete. It's very easy to work with brutalism, it's very inexpensive, and as you'll note, brutalism, it tends to induce your compliance. Talk to your friends that went to UIC, got their degrees from UIC, Circle Campus, a lot of brutalist style buildings at Circle Campus here in Chicago. And now I have something truly beautiful for you. Out to the forward, you'll see a green terracotta tower rising above the Morton Steakhouse sign. That is 24 karat gold up there. It is 1/500th of an inch thick, it's real. Daniel Burnham's sons designed that tower in 1929. It was built. It's the former Carbide and Carbon building. Why would Chicagoans put gold on a skyscraper? Well, the 1920s, King Tut's tomb, all the wealth and prestige. Also though, we were just doing here in Chicago what had already been done in New York City. It's okay if you don't know, look it up. The Radiator Building. The Radiator Building in Manhattan is a beautiful gold cornice. It'll remind you of the Carbide and Carbon building here in Chicago. Do go see it. It's called the Pendry Hotel. That's a historical landmark on Michigan Avenue. And now I've got for you also on the right forward the skinniest skyscraper in Chicago. That thing has stood there since 1928, used to be all by itself. We call the building the Gothic Rocket. The Gothic Rocket has white glazed terracotta on the exterior, this white stone here. Very beautiful, it twinkles in the sunlight, but it's very fragile. White glazed terracotta is so fragile, I pronounce that word that way. Sometimes I tell guests it's fragile, but that's Italian. So yeah, check it out, right? The Gothic Rocket, you'll see Gothic revivalism, very lovely tower again from 1928 by Hubert Riddle. They call it 75 East Wacker Drive. I still call it the former Lincoln Tower, the former Mather Tower. And friends, one of Chicago's lesser known nicknames is Paris on the Prairie. Yeah, you can thank Daniel Burnham for that nickname. He imagined himself in Paris while he was imagining his ideas for the port of Chicago in 1909. Buckingham Fountain and Grant Park, those are modeled after Versailles and the Louvre. The upper Wacker walkway there on the right is modeled after the River Seine, Parisian influence there on that lovely walkway. The bridge here ahead of us, it is modeled after Alexander III's bridge in Paris, France. Michigan Avenue is the old shoreline of Lake Michigan. Everything out here is landfill or filled land, right? We built this city up out of a swamp. This is where Chicago's first non-native resident used to live. His name was Jean-Baptiste Pont du Sable. The French would tell you it's du sable. We in Chicago say du sable. Yeah, du sable. That's the Chicago accent working for and against you. Let's watch our heads here at this bridge. Well done, sir. So du sable was half African, half French, okay? He lived here on the lakefront as a fur trapper trader from 1779 to 1800. Folks, where du Sable lived, the first Chicagoan, is just here to our left. Where sits today the Tribune Tower. Photographers take a picture of the Tribune in its entirety, then zoom into the cornice up top there, get the flying buttresses, those upside down L's. Here's the neat thing. This thing's from 1925. That's when Art Deco was the expected fun thing. The midsection has that vibe. You've seen the limestone, ribbon windows, etc. See how the base and cornice though? French Gothic revivalism. When Raymond Hood and John Mead Howells designed the Tribune, yeah, they designed an Art Deco building, but they splashed that European influence on it as a reminder, right? Like as a tip of the hat to the architecture that was done before them, right? The first skyscrapers built in Chicago, you'll remember they're borrowing from places in Europe. So they kind of splashed that additional decor on it to pay tribute to those who came before them. With all that said, architecture is considered to be a conversation over time. Though these buildings are all different, you know, they are linked and related. They are one style begets the next. They're always borrowing from each other. Take, for example, this. You'll love this. Here to our left is the NBC5 Tower. You may think it was built in the 20s and 30s as it looks like Art Deco. You may think you're in Midtown Manhattan right now staring at 30 Rock, right? It has that vibe as well, all on purpose. Here's the kicker. Adrian Smith, a Chicagoan, he designed it, built it in the 1980s. Right, when they were having fun with things, yeah? So you can't call it Art Deco. It's just paying tribute to that. You've got to call it what it is. They call it Eco Deco. Eco Deco. And very quickly, see halfway up there, the upside down L's there? Yeah? See those flying buttresses on the NBC5? Those are there, as you guessed, to be a tip of the hat, a reference to the flying buttresses you just saw there on the tribute. Now as we make our way under Columbus, we'll head out past Lakeshore Drive to the turning basin, get a beautiful skyline view and
This one's cool.
appreciate the lakefront. Before we get out there though, there's a lovely neighborhood here on the right that you could come check out later in life called Lakeshore East. Maybe you want to hang out here on the water's edge at Island Party Hut. Here at Lakeshore East, do come see this really cool triangular shaped building. Oh my gosh, watch out, the Swiss Hotel. It's from the 1980s. See how it looks like the bow of a ship as we go by? And we talked triangles earlier, right? We talked about Harry Weiss and the cottages he built. That's another project by Harry Weiss, a man who was again a sailor, served in the Navy, loved the triangle. To drive home to you how much he liked the triangle, folks, Harry Weiss designed one of our prisons here in Chicago, one of our correctional facilities. It's in the near South Loop, not that far from our dock. Maybe you've been.
That one's cool.
The prison he built is a triangular shaped building, right? When you see it, it's like fun and playful, but we know better. I told that joke last week and a gal chimed in, she screams, "That's not very funny." And I go, me and all of my omnipotent wisdom, I go, "Oh, so you have been?" Yikes, bro, that did not help my cause. I just kept digging that hole deeper and deeper, right fellas? All right, now, in Lakeshore East, do come see this brand spanking new skyscraper. It's called the St. Regis. It was inspired by the naturally forming crystals that occur in things like fluorite and sapphire. Your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. There's 6 different shades of glazing on the glass. The different shades help to accentuate the widening and thinning of the building. This structure here was designed by a female architect, a woman named Jeannie Gang. Jeannie Gang has her own firm. It's called Studio Gang. Jeannie Gang is from Illinois. She grew up in Belvedere, a small town outside of Rockford, Illinois. She attended U of I. She's won awards for her work. She was recently tapped to do the multi-billion-dollar renovation of O'Hare Airport's International Terminal. Boom. Also, that's the tallest skyscraper ever designed and built on the planet. That was designed by a female architect who also owns her own architectural firm.
That's cool.
Having said all of that, let's please hear it for our ladies here today. Yay! Yeah, ladies, you're number one. Everyone else is terrible. You're number one. See the bridge houses here at Lakeshore Drive? Do they kind of remind you of the Art Deco style with the verticality, smooth stone? Like, okay, yeah, neat thing. All the bridge houses on these bridges are different, and they capture different styles of architecture popular when the bridge was first built. So in 1938, when this lovely double-decker bascule trunnion bridge got built, they went with the Art Deco style, of course, with the bridge houses. So check those out as you wander the river later.
Oh, it's Navy Pier.
And as we clear the bridge, things to appreciate out here, Navy Pier. Don't think of Navy Pier as a bogus tourist trap, right? It's from the Daniel Burnham Plan of 1909. It was designed and built by Bennett, Parsons, and Frost. They also built Upper and Lower Wacker Drive and Buckingham Fountain. Folks, Navy Pier was an army barracks for World War I, right? For World War II, a naval aviation training facility was set up here. I mean, you should go see the pier for that alone. But you can ride the Ferris wheel. It's a tribute to the first ever built Ferris wheel, built for the World's Fair of 1893 by a man named George Washington Gale Ferris. He was a Pittsburgh steel bridge builder, built the first ever Ferris wheel. There's a theater on the pier. I love the Shakespeare Theater. Head on over to the Shakespeare there and get some iambic pentameter in your life. And if you, hey, everything's just blown away. Thank you so much, dude. If you walk out to the end of the pier and back, that's a lovely view. The pier is 3,300 feet in length, and out at the end of Navy Pier is the world's largest rooftop bar. It's called Offshore. We enjoy 26 miles of lakefront here on the 5th biggest lake on the planet. You can feel the power of this massive body of water, one of 5 Great Lakes, 10,000 years old. The Great Lakes make up 20% of all the world's fresh water. We have over 5,000 boat slips here in Chicago, spread across 13 harbors, over 24 beaches. Enjoy the lakefront, like the neighborhoods and the river. And as we come about here at the turning basin, friends, have the cameras out, pivot to your left, be mindful of your neighbors. Everyone wants to get this shot. Big ups to Captain Joe for bringing us out here to the turning basin so you can enjoy these lovely views of what is arguably one of the world's most beautiful skylines. I'll pick back up very shortly, friends, as we continue on this journey. One more big leg of our trip to go. Nice to see you all enjoying. Thank you very much, and welcome to Chicago. Cheers, and we'll see you soon. Building here, the Wrigley by Graham Anderson, Probst and White, is done in the Spanish revivalist style, Spanish revivalism. The clock tower, for example, was inspired by Giralda's bell tower in Seville, Spain. Here's a tidbit. There's 250,000 white glazed terracotta tiles on the facade of the Wrigley building. Each terracotta tile has a number on the back of it, and they are stored in a database. They are cleaned and or replaced over time. Let's all watch our heads here at Michigan Avenue, the old shoreline of the lake where DuSable lived. Photographers, pivot to the right, take this picture of the Wrigley as we clear the old lakefront. You can only get this shot on a boat on a cloudy day in the fall. Yeah, that Chicago school, the decorative base up top, the decorative cornice. Want to see more of that, friends? Here to our left, the second building Trump Tower is referencing. See the baseline, right? The bottom part, Corinthian columns, a griffin, or rather griffins, as a stone relief, lower edges up top. Corinthian columns, epic, a temple called the Tempietto. See the Grecian urns that sit out on the edges, hidden in plain sight? Don't miss those, some folks do. Now as you pull back, you'll see, okay, Chicago school, base, shaft, cornice. We talked earlier about Beaux-Arts, the ancient Greco-Roman influence. Here's an awesome thing I don't think you would have noticed had you not been on our tour. In 2016, they turned the building into a hotel called the London House. Do go to the rooftop bar at the London House. It's probably the best of the dozens we've got. See the baseline and cornice line on the new glass sliver? I described them to you as sawtooth-shaped window frames. See how the new piece in 2016 lines up perfectly with the limestone from 1923. That's the old and the new coming together. It's amazing, subtle, but cool. And friends, really quickly, I want to squeeze it in. There to the forward left is the former Jewelers building. The former Jewelers building is cooler than these guys over there to your left. It's true. The former Jewelers building there is modeled after a 15th century Italian monastery. Isn't that lovely? See the decorative base and cornice, that Chicago school. The feature on top in the middle is called a belvedere. Lower right and left hand sides, those are called tempiettos. I just squeezed that one in because it's so great. With the third building Trump Tower references here to the right. Take a look at that, get a picture if you wish. That's Mies van der Rohe's IBM building. He's the father of modern architecture. That's the last commercial building he built in America before he passed away. Built in 1971, that is the youngest building in Chicago to be declared a historical landmark. And of the dozens of buildings Mies van der Rohe built here in Chicago, that's the only one he built that's right smack dab on the river. Now, to make a long story short, too late, Mies van der Rohe taught here in Chicago what is now IIT. Okay, one of Mies van der Rohe's students was named Bertrand Goldberg. Folks, Goldberg rejected modernism. He did not like the dark black box. How do you know that? He built these. Welcome, welcome to the Marina City Towers, aka the Corn Cob buildings, the Chicago tree houses, the flower towers. Built in the 60s, they're made of concrete. Forward reinforced concrete. They are 60 stories apiece. Friends of mine who live here and everyone else, they all complain, usually in unison, how difficult it is to decorate the petal-shaped units. There in those buildings, those are said to be some of the world's most photographed buildings, and they're featured in every movie made in Chicago ever. Now this next one I waited on purpose until we were deeper into this stuff. You'll really appreciate this now. Go ahead and pull back and take it all in here. From the early 90s, right? A lot going on, color, material, wow. This is 77 West Wacker. It's modeled after a single Greco-Roman column. The building was also inspired by Giotto's bell tower in Florence, Italy. Look up Giotto's bell tower if you don't know, and then come back to this, you'll say, wow. At the very top of the building, see that? You already know. That is a tip of the hat to the Parthenon in Athens, Greece. Isn't that one neat? Those influences. It was all done by James DiStefano. James DiStefano worked alongside a Spanish architect on that building, a man named Ricardo Bofill. Yeah, the old R.R. Donnelly building. I love that one.
Don't get
Hey,
away.
someone's getting married. Love is in the air. Love is in the air. That's my joke. Man, I'm so lonely, dude. Whatever. No, it's cool. I'll be fine. I have my buildings to keep me company. That's the saddest thing you heard all fall. So I mentioned, albeit briefly, that Trump Towers from '09, it had articulated glass and steel. I just wanted y'all to know it had a bit more texture than buildings of today. Here's another building from 2009, but by a different person. 300 North LaSalle here by Pickard Shilton, features articulated glass and steel. It kind of dates the building. The nickname I gave this building in '09 really makes it seem dated. I call this the flash drive building. Doesn't it look like a flash drive? Like a very cool high-tech one? Yeah. Plug that bad boy in, download your TPS reports, your photos, your documents. Now here's the kicker. I can really make that 2009 skyscraper seem dated when I show you the new building by the exact same guy. As we watch our heads here at Wells Street, out to the forward, Pickard Shilton's new building will make that one seem old. Coming into view now, there it is, his new tower. We call it the Hot Pocket building. Nice photo, right? More contemporary than that. The curved linear front of the building, designed to maximize the view of what's at Wolf Point, the buildings, the sky, the river, the passing boats. It's actually called River Point. Neat, right? There at Wolf Point, here at the end of the main branch of the river. The parabolic arch at the base, the glass beneath it is angled downward. Building, so blammo. 6 years ago, mural. See the mural? It's working. I can't not talk about it, right? See the dot in the middle? You are here. Where are my cartographers? Yeah, where is Rand McNally? Folks, it's a map of downtown Chicago, emphasis on the old swamp that is now our river. The roadways, that grid system, from the Daniel Burnham plan of 1909. And that dot in the middle, that's technically that building, right? And where it sits in the city on the river. I love that about that. This means, friends, in an effort to draw more attention to their building, you know, to really put it on the map. Units, building green spaces on tops of buildings that can mitigate rain runoff and reduce pollution. Down here, all that limestone where that child is playing, which is epic, that's the remains of old foundations from buildings that used to be on this property. Imagine the new developers coming in, right? They got to dig out of the earth what's already there to do their own soil sampling, to begin to do their own infrastructure work. They dug up the foundations of old agricultural buildings and rail yards that used to be down here, cut it all up, repurposed it, placed it right back in the environment. I think that's cool. And then this one might look familiar to you. Welcome, welcome to River City. Familiar to you not just because we start here, right? That's too easy. River City was designed by Bertrand Goldberg. You'll recall he's the student of Mies van der Rohe who built the corncob buildings back in the 60s. He rejected modernism, loved nature, loved circles. So River City here is an S-shaped building of poured reinforced concrete. There's over 400 units up there. A temperature-controlled indoor glass atrium for residents, a school on the property. There's a rooftop for grilling and chilling. And most importantly, friends, the only thing that matters in life, the marina, where there are 70 boat slips. Get yours today. Friends, our marina is unique in that there are bubblers down there. The bubblers disallow the water to freeze in the winter, so you can leave your boat down there all year long. My south side, Italian side, my great-grandfather came from Bari, Italy. His name was Vito Pervino. He and his wife Teresa had a house on Kildare where they raised my grandpa Frank, where my grandpa Frank and his wife Betty raised my mom, aunt, and uncle, and lived on Kildare, near like 47th Street in Pulaski and Archer Heights. Folks, my great-grandfather, Vito Perino, he used to be a bridge tender. He worked in the bridge houses, right? Opening and closing the Bascule Trunnion bridges here in the city back in the day when cargo vessels had the right of way. 3 years ago, my family and I were going through some of my family's things, right? That's what happened. My mom found and gave to me my great Papa Vito's badge. I have his badge he wore as a bridge tender. It says, Bridge Tender Special Police. It's dope. Yeah, my mom gave it to me. Not to Michael, not to Lynn. I love my siblings, but no, that's not. Lynn's my big sister, Michael, my little brother, who's in logistics. And folks, I'm in therapy. No, I tease. It would be okay if I were, of course. I want you all to know that much. But the terrible idea behind that joke is, you guessed it, I am the not so well-adjusted middle child. Kind of zany, kind of crazy. Where are my middle kids? Y'all get it? Yep, you are enough, middle kids. What you do matters. I've got it on good authority. It's just coming in. Your siblings are mediocre. I don't have a very big family, but we are very tight-knit. We kind of all live near each other, spend a lot of time together. That's what it's all about now. Family and friends and voting. There's a brand new neighborhood being built here to our left. Get this, there's 68 acres of land here. Over the next 15 years, $15 billion will be invested as they build a massive new neighborhood here called the 78. 12 buildings, high-rises, mid-rises, townhomes. Think of the Riverwalk project coming. They call the new neighborhood the 78 because this will become the 78th community area in Chicago. Even within our current 77 community areas, folks, there are over 200 neighborhoods.
Wow.
As we are joined by the birds, apparently. Looks pretty awesome there behind you if you're into Alfred Hitchcock films. Yeah, go online, see the artist renditions of both the 78 here, the Lincoln Yards up on the North Branch. Look up the Bally's Casino development that's already underway. Very much redefining Chicago and granting more access to people in the city onto the Chicago River. Friends, let's go for one last boat ride together. I'll take my third and final break. This one's a bit longer in that I want to give you a chance to use the washroom and the bar one last time. Do use the washroom for sure right now, as our team will shut it down early before we get back to the dock with Securitas for cleanliness.
It's Chinatown.
Maybe you graduate from an inflatable kayak to a real boat. You show up down here with a big vessel, you radio in on channel 16, you say, hey there, how are ya? Exiting the South Loop, please open up the Amtrak bridge. A person in an office over a mile away who now remotely operates this thing, they respond in kind. All right, Captain, you got it, proceed ahead. And then you watch as the entirety of that bridge climbs up those stationary towers just for you to make your way north or south here on the south branch of our river. Pretty cool stuff, yeah? Now, talked about our parks system here in the city. You've seen several areas to enjoy the water's edge. This one is called Ping Tom Park. Ping Tom Park is a prairie-inspired park. Ping Tom, his name, he's a businessman, a man in real estate. He fought the city to bring money, investment, and attention, housing into his community. I do want to welcome you also here to Chicago's Chinatown neighborhood. Chinatown's a great neighborhood. Do go check it out. It's a great example of how Chicago is a big city with a small town feel. And if you're like myself, you enjoy food, language, cultures, other people, in Chicago, many of our neighborhoods, thankfully, are the remnants of the different cultural niches, right, carved out by the various groups who came to this country to build it and to build this here city we call Chicago. Enjoy the neighborhoods in Chicago. Big city, small town feel, the Midwestern attitude. We're like, hey, how are you? Have a hot dog. The lake is to the east. Have a good day. And as you can tell, friends, right, our past, our present, our future, the stories of Chicago, they are written upon these waterways. Engineering-wise, this river's been widened, straightened, dredged, filled in, and reversed. They reversed the flow of the main branch of the Chicago River between the years 1892 and 1900. Back in the day, right throughout time, the water in this old swamp used to all dump into Lake Michigan. The toxins, pollutants, and waste material throughout the 1800s, literally for decades, killed hundreds of people every year in the city. This happened for a very long time. The city of Chicago did do many things to beef up their infrastructure, new sewer systems, new canals. They're trying to pull water off the lake and send it down to the Gulf. It did not get any better throughout the 1800s. It wouldn't be until 1892 when the Army Corps of Engineers began that 8-year-long process. They dredged out the main and south branches of the river. They dug them 15 to 20 feet deeper than they actually were. Then they dug out a 27-mile-long canal that cuts through the Valparaiso Moraine. The canal links up with the Illinois and Des Plaines rivers, ultimately meets up with the Mississippi River, then heads all the way down to the Gulf. So the canal and the dredging process that took 8 years to accomplish would then just utilize gravity to pull the water off the lake, the now higher part. It would dump into the Chicago River, carrying away the toxins, pollutants, the waste material. It's okay, you can live there. It'll just go into the Gulf of Mexico. Out of sight, out of mind. Somebody else's problem. Welcome to America, Jack. All right. The dredging process utilized gravity, pulled the water off the lake. All that water got shipped south. Yes, indeed. And in 1903, St. Louis sued Chicago. St. Louis, though, lost that lawsuit because it was a lawsuit, not a World Series. That's a backhanded compliment. The Cardinals have 13. My Cubbies have 3. And that's not okay. The Chicago attorneys of the era, they were able to prove in court that the contaminants we were shipping down to St. Louis would indeed dissipate before the water got down. That then begged the question at that time, why is the water so toxic then in St. Louis? They have been doing the exact same thing for decades. How you doing? Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, they sued Chicago. Lawsuits ensued until in 1938 when the Army Corps of Engineers came back and they built a big valve on the lakefront. That valve was right there by the turning basin. It is the Chicago Harbor Line. The only way to go from lakeside to riverside and vice versa. It was an engineering marvel of its time when they reversed the flow of the main branch of the river, and dig this, they moved more earth to reverse the flow of the main branch of the Chicago River than they would later move when they went down and built the Panama Canal.